Ah, England! But of course we're still here. The land of tea, crumpets, charming villages, and, oh look, it's on fire again. We're in 12th century medieval England, a time of chivalry, gallantry and roads so riddled with potholes they made modern Britons look like racetracks. And of course law and order so fragile that if the king so much as stubbed his toe too hard, society collapsed faster than your mate on his third pint of mead. But let's start with something truly terrifying. Not war, not disease, not even the bubonic plague. No, something far worse, travelling. Now, of course, travelling today is exciting and is a part of our lives. However, back in 12th century England, travelling was like playing a game of Will I Make It? Spoiler, the house always won. And by house I mean the local bandits, plagues, and the occasional dysentery. Yes, my dear viewers, join me as we take a trip down the rickety bandit-infested lanes of medieval England, where roads were more death traps than thoroughfares, and kings had the life expectancy of a mayfly in a furnace. They were ancient, winding, and about as well maintained as your uncle's 20-year-old Ford Fiesta. Sure, a few new roads were built in the 12th century, mainly to connect towns and bridges, but don't expect them to be smooth sailing. No, these roads were delightfully unpredictable, featuring charming amenities such as ditches and potholes big enough to swallow a horse whole. Random wells dug right into the road, because why not add an element of surprise? A complete lack of maintenance, unless a priest guilt-tripped people into fixing the wicked ways, which, given the state of things, must have been all the ways. And before you ask, yes, there were rules. The king's highways were required to be at least 30 feet wide, just enough for two wagons to pass each other. But did that mean they were good roads? No, not exactly. It's like saying, technically this is a 5-star inn when the roof's caved in, and the bed's on fire, and the complimentary breakfast is a handful of mouldy turnips. Now, after a long day dodging death, you might want a place to rest your weary head. Enter the medieval inn, a fine establishment if you enjoy sleeping in a flea-ridden hay pile while listening to drunken monks debating theology. Fun fact, the word inn is a Saxon word dating back to when the Saxons first realised, hey, maybe sleeping in a ditch isn't ideal. But let's say you're too broke for an inn. No problem, just crash at a stranger's house. It was actually a social custom back then to let travellers stay for 2 nights. Free room and board? But after the second night, your host was officially responsible for whatever mischief you got up to. So if you were planning to start a brawl or rob the local blacksmith, best do it by night 2. And for those with a thirst for adventure or just actual thirst, alehouses were your best bet. These were marked with a long pole and a bush hanging from it, the medieval equivalent of neon signs. And if you're wondering whether this tradition still exists, take a look at your local pub's hanging flower baskets and know that its roots lie in medieval drunken revelry. Ah yes, the roads were not just treacherous because of their shoddy condition. No, they were also the perfect workplace for thieves, outlaws and highwaymen. Think of it as medieval Uber, except instead of giving you a ride, they robbed you blind and sometimes murdered you for fun. In fact, even local knights and lords got in on the action. Imagine Sir Geoffrey of whatever shire knocking on your carriage window. My lord, that will be 10 gold coins to cross this bridge. And by 10 gold coins, I mean everything you own, including your socks. So if you wanted to survive a long journey, travelling in groups or caravans was a must. Not because people were friendly, of course, oh no, but because if bandits attacked, they might stab someone else instead of you. And let's not forget the sheer chaos of pilgrimages. Thousands of people marching toward religious shrines, some on foot, others in carts, hoping for divine miracles. Because nothing says spiritual journey like dodging bandits, sleeping in ditches and praying your fellow travellers don't steal your shoes. Thomas Becket's shrine in Canterbury even had a reputation for healing not just humans but also horses and hawks, because apparently even falcons needed a spiritual tune-up now and then. Now, my dear viewer, what happens when the king dies? Mourning? A dignified transition of power? No, of course not. The moment a king croaked, the law ceased to exist. Yes, you heard me right. When the king died, the peace died with him. Imagine your town mayor dropping dead and suddenly everyone loots Tesco. That's medieval England for you. When Henry I died in 1135, his nephew Stephen of Blois rushed over from France, grabbed the crown and declared, "I'm king now." The problem? Henry's daughter Matilda was the rightful heir, and medieval barons, with the attitude of the time, said, "A woman in charge over my dead body?" And so began 16 years of civil war. This period between 1138 and 1153 became known as the Anarchy. Barons turned into warlords, taxes skyrocketed, villages burned, and everyone suffered, except, of course, the ones doing the looting. Matilda even managed to capture Stephen in 1141, but then Londoners kicked her out for being too demanding. She then made some ridiculous escapes, including pretending to be a corpse wrapped in linen, and dressing in white and sneaking out of Oxford Castle across a frozen river. Stealth level 100. The war dragged on until 1153, when both sides finally said, "You know what? This is exhausting." So Stephen stayed king, but Matilda's son Henry was made heir. And what did we learn from this? Absolutely nothing. But on the bright side, the umbrella was introduced to England during this war. Yes, you heard that correctly. Out of all the destruction, castles and battles, the umbrella survived. So what have we learned today? Medieval roads were death traps. Inns were free if you overstayed just the right amount. The moment a king died, England turned into GTA Medieval Edition. And despite 16 years of war, the biggest legacy of this period was the umbrella. So next time you complain about delayed trains, just remember, you could be stranded on a medieval road, bartering your last loaf of bread for directions, and praying the local law doesn't decide to tax your shoelaces. Survival in medieval England was basically just a really intense game of dodgeball, with swords. Stay safe, question all toll fees, and if a civil war erupts, remember, camouflage isn't just for the battlefield. Would you survive a day on medieval roads? Comment below. Follow for more history wrapped in sarcasm and existential dread, the unexplained, and of course, some gaming.